Doctor, I've been doing it the same way for 50 years, but lately something just feels off. That's what Thomas, 73, quietly told me one morning. A man in good health, not on any medication, no major illnesses. But he sensed that something in his body was changing, silently and worryingly. And the cause wasn't his age. It was something private, masturbation. Not the act itself, but the way he was doing it. And how it was slowly damaging his heart, his prostate, and even his ability to feel connected to his own body. I'm Dr. James Whitaker. For more than 30 years, I've worked with men over 60. And I've learned this truth: the problem isn't touching yourself. The danger lies in how you do it. In this video, I'll walk you through 7 common mistakes older men make when it comes to self-pleasure, and how to fix them before they quietly steal your energy, your performance, and your self-confidence. But before we begin, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Type the name of your state or country in the comments below. I'd love to know. And if you care about your health and well-being after 60, consider subscribing to this channel so you never miss a message that could make a difference. Now, let's start with the first mistake. One that seems harmless, but slowly numbs your brain and your emotions without you even realizing it. Mistake number 1, using pornography as your main form of stimulation. I once sat with Richard, 68 years old, a quiet man, living alone, no major health concerns. But he looked at me uneasy and said softly, "Doctor, I don't feel much anymore. Even though I'm healthy, the sensation just faded." I asked him one simple question. "How often do you watch adult videos?" He looked down, not out of shame, but because it had never occurred to him that what he watched every day might be hurting him. The truth is, after 60, your brain's dopamine system, the one responsible for pleasure and motivation, doesn't work like it used to. When you regularly watch fast-paced, intense adult content, your brain becomes overstimulated. It gets flooded with artificial stimulation. So what does it do? It starts to numb itself as a form of protection. And that's when real-life touch starts to feel dull. That's when the connection fades. That's when you stop feeling. Even if your body is still healthy, you may find it harder to respond, harder to connect, harder to enjoy real intimacy. Many men think they've just lost their edge with age. But the truth is, it's not age, it's overstimulation. If you don't reset your brain's response system, that numbness can linger for years. If you've noticed yourself feeling less, connecting less, or enjoying less, this might be the hidden reason why. You don't have to give it all up, but you do need to become aware. Let your brain find balance again. Let your senses reset. If what I just said feels familiar, leave a comment below with the word "yes." One word is enough to let me know you're not alone. Now, if you thought this mistake was surprising, wait until you hear the next one. It's not about what you watch, but where you do it, and how that quiet habit may be putting serious pressure on your body. Mistake number 2, masturbating while sitting on the toilet. George, 70 years old, was a very careful man, lived alone, paid attention to his health. But lately, he felt like his bladder wasn't working like before. Frequent urges, dripping after urination, a dull ache in the lower belly. He thought it might be dehydration, or just aging. So I asked him, "Where do you usually masturbate?" He looked at me and said with a slight smile, "In the bathroom. It's the only place where I feel I have real privacy." That answer, I've heard it many times. For many older men, the bathroom is the one quiet place where no one bothers them. But here's what most people don't realize. That position, sitting on the toilet, often hunched over, is doing far more damage than they think. When you sit that way, especially for long periods, you compress your pelvic area. You reduce blood flow. You put pressure on the prostate. You strain the nerves that are already more fragile with age. And what does that lead to? Swelling, incomplete urination, groin pain, a lingering sense of discomfort after climax. I've seen the scans. I've followed the patterns. What seems like a harmless habit can trigger long-term problems, slowly, silently. But here's the good news. You don't need medication or surgery to change this. You just need to change the environment. Stand, recline. Choose a position that gives your pelvis space to breathe. Your prostate is quietly begging you to stop squeezing it. If you've ever done this, or still do, type the word chair in the comments. A small reminder that your body wasn't built to be compressed that way. And if you think posture is the only danger, just wait. Because in the next part, we'll talk about what happens when you turn self-pleasure into a rushed routine, and how that pressure robs you of the deeper sensations your body still longs to feel. Mistake number 3, rushing through the experience. Doctor, I just want to get it over with. The quicker, the better. That's what Frank, 67, told me during one of our sessions. He had spent years managing businesses, solving problems fast. Efficiency was second nature to him. But when it came to his personal moments, he confessed it had become mechanical. Like checking something off a list. No emotion. No satisfaction. Just a routine. And that's one of the most common mistakes I see in older men. They treat masturbation as something to get done. Quickly. Quietly. Without presence. But here's what you need to know. After 60, your body doesn't respond well to pressure. Not physically. Not emotionally. When you rush, your nervous system enters a state of tension. Your heart rate spikes. Blood vessels tighten. And the hormones that are supposed to bring healing, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, don't get released properly. You might reach climax. But instead of feeling relieved, you feel drained. Instead of recharged, you feel emptier. Even worse, over time, your body learns this rushed pattern. It starts to believe that pleasure is fast, shallow, disconnected. And slowly you begin to lose sensitivity. You can't stay aroused. You struggle with desire, especially with a partner. And all the while, you think it's just part of aging. But it's not. It's the habit of rushing. A habit that's quietly stealing something deeper than just a few moments of pleasure. So here's what I tell my patients. Slow it down. Breathe. Feel. There's no finish line. Just presence. Even now, your body can still experience deep sensation if you give it space. If you've ever found yourself rushing through it, type one word in the comments, rush. Not to judge yourself, but to remember real connection can't be rushed. Now, speaking of presence, let's talk about something most men ignore. A group of muscles that control everything from erection strength to bladder function. Once you understand this, your entire approach to sexual health may shift. Mistake number 4, ignoring the pelvic floor. Leonard, 69, was once a swimmer in college. Even in his late 60s, he was eating well, staying active, and still had good energy. But he sat in my office, confused. Doctor, I'm doing everything right. But something just doesn't work the way it used to. So I asked him, have you ever trained your pelvic floor? He blinked. My what? And that's the issue. Most men have never even heard of it. But the pelvic floor is one of the most important muscle groups in your entire body, especially after 60. It sits beneath your bladder, your prostate, your sexual organs. It's the hidden foundation that supports erection, orgasm, and urinary control. And over time, especially with long hours of sitting, stored tension in your lower belly, and a lack of attention, this group of muscles grows weaker. Quietly. And when it does, you may notice dribbling, leaking, weaker erections, less feeling at climax, a general sense of disconnect. What makes it worse is that many men like Leonard believe they're doing all the right things. They exercise. They eat clean. But they've never reconnected with this part of their body. Every time you masturbate without engaging the pelvic floor, or worse, when you bear down and push, you put pressure on your prostate. You weaken the very muscles that are meant to support it. But here's the hopeful part. You can rebuild strength and connection. Start simple. While aroused, gently contract the muscle you'd use to stop the flow of urine. Hold it lightly. No strain, just awareness. Over time, that one small action can awaken your body again. A few weeks later, Leonard came back, hopeful. "Doctor, I'm starting to feel that spark again. It's subtle, but it's there. Sometimes that's all it takes." If this is the first time you're hearing about the pelvic floor, type the word "new" in the comments. Because for many men, this is the beginning of a new relationship with their own body. Now, even if you're training the right muscles, there's still one more factor that can throw everything out of balance. And that's frequency, doing it too often, or not enough. Let's talk about why both extremes can quietly drain your vitality. Mistake number 5, frequency that's too high or too low. Samuel, 72, sat quietly in my office. He looked thoughtful and said, "I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, doctor. I stopped masturbating about 5 years ago. But lately, I feel like my body is shutting down." Meanwhile, another man, Raymond, 66, told me something completely different. "I do it almost every day, sometimes twice. But now I feel exhausted, numb, like I've lost myself." Both men were sincere, and both were making the same mistake at two opposite extremes. Too much or too little. After age 60, the body doesn't recover as quickly as it once did. If you masturbate too often, out of habit, boredom, or to cope with negative feelings, your body struggles to keep up. Hormones go out of balance. The prostate becomes irritated, and over time, the desire fades. Pleasure becomes routine. Energy drops. It becomes something you do, not something you feel. On the other end, if you stop completely, maybe because of health concerns, beliefs, or the thought that you're too old, you risk the opposite problem. Without regular stimulation, blood flow decreases. Nerve endings grow less responsive. The tissues start to shrink and sensitivity is lost. You may not notice it at first, but when you finally try to reconnect, the system feels like it's gone quiet. The truth is, sexuality is part of being alive. Even solo arousal helps keep the system functioning. It supports circulation, preserves sensation, and maintains the body's rhythm. So what's the right frequency? There's no one-size-fits-all. But for most men over 60, 1 to 2 times a week, done mindfully, not out of habit, can make a world of difference. Enough to keep the system alive without depleting your energy. Listen to your body. It speaks more softly now, but it still knows what it needs. If you've noticed yourself falling into one extreme, too often or not at all, just type the word "off" in the comments. It's a way to say, "I'm paying attention now." And even when frequency feels right, there's still one mistake that can silently undo all your progress. It's something many men do without realizing it, and it's damaging the very nerves and tissues that make pleasure possible. Let's take a look. Mistake number 6, using too much pressure or force. "I have to go harder to feel anything, doctor." I've heard that line more times than I can count. From men like Walter, 71. He lived alone, still in decent health, but starting to feel a dullness in his body. And like many men, he thought the solution was more pressure, tighter grip, more force, hoping that feeling would come back. But here's the problem. This is one of the most damaging things you can do to your body after 60. The nerves in the penis, especially in older age, are delicate. They don't recover the way they used to. When you apply too much pressure, you're not helping sensation return. You're destroying it. Over time, this habit can lead to microscopic tears in the tissue, loss of elasticity, scar tissue under the surface, even curvature or pain during arousal. It can change the shape and function of your anatomy permanently. Harold, 68, was another patient of mine. He thought he was just rubbing a little harder to wake things up. But his body wasn't waking up. It was shutting down. Less sensation, more fatigue, less response. Because the truth is, force doesn't bring back feeling. It steals it. The body learns to disconnect from what feels like pain or overstimulation. And mentally, you start to associate pleasure with struggle, with effort. That creates a new pattern, a mental block. You feel like it's all work, no reward. So here's what I recommend. Shift your mindset. Touch yourself with kindness, with curiosity. Use less pressure. Go slower. Give your nerves time to speak again. Let the sensitivity return on its own terms. If you've ever caught yourself using too much force, type the word gentle in the comments. Not as a correction, but as a new promise to your future self. Now, even if you do everything right physically, there's still one final mistake that can rob the moment of all its meaning. It's not about technique. It's not about the body. It's about the heart. Let's talk about the emotional disconnection that might be the most damaging of all. Mistake number 7, masturbating without emotion, connection, or meaning. Henry, 74, once said to me, "I still do it, doctor, but I don't know why anymore. It just doesn't feel like anything." I looked at him and I understood. It wasn't that his body was failing. It was that he had lost the emotional connection to himself. This is the final mistake and the most invisible. Masturbating without emotion, without meaning, without presence. What once was a moment of self-care becomes mechanical, a habit, a ritual stripped of warmth. You go through the motions, but your heart is no longer in it. You climax, but you feel nothing. No joy, no peace, just silence. Over time, this disconnect begins to teach your nervous system the wrong lesson. That pleasure is something you do alone, in silence, without feeling. And that's when the damage goes deeper, not just physically, but emotionally. Because what you're losing isn't just sensation. You're losing connection with your body, with your spirit, with yourself. I've spoken with so many men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond who've told me the same thing. It's not the same anymore. And often their bodies still function, but their hearts have stepped out of the moment. That emotional absence changes everything. Because when your body performs but your soul isn't present, you don't get the healing chemicals. You don't get oxytocin to lift your mood. You don't get dopamine to spark your energy. You're left with flatness, a shadow of what that experience used to mean. But here's the truth. Even solo touch can be sacred. Even now you can return to yourself, not in shame, but in gratitude. Your body is still here. It still feels. It still matters. If these words speak to you, type one word in the comments, yes. It's a quiet way of saying, I'm ready to feel again. Now that you've heard all 7 mistakes, it's time to bring it all together. Because this isn't just about fixing habits. It's about finding something deeper. Conclusion. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to speak to you, not as a doctor, but as a man who has listened to many stories just like yours. The 7 mistakes we've talked about, too much porn, bad posture, rushing, ignoring the pelvic floor, wrong frequency, too much pressure, and lack of emotional presence, they don't come from laziness. They come from habit. From doing things the same way for years, not realizing that the body changes. After 60, your circulation slows down. Your prostate becomes more sensitive. Your nerves need more care. And your heart, more than anything, needs to feel again. All 7 mistakes share one common thread: disconnection from your body, from your senses, from yourself. But here's the good news. You can reconnect. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Just start small. Breathe. Slow down. Touch with care. Be curious, not ashamed. There is no race anymore. No pressure to perform. Won't sleep. That's only a quiet invitation to feel again. Your body is still alive. It may speak more softly now, but it's still speaking. If this video helped you, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another message that matters. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes one conversation at the right moment, can help someone come back to life. Because healing doesn't always start in the doctor's office. Sometimes it starts in the quietest, most private corners of your life. And your journey isn't over. Not even close.